Your journey has been an interesting one up to here. You've questioned so much more than those around you. You've even questioned yourself as to how you could have grown into these thoughts. Am I crazy? When did I begin to think differently? Why do people in general appear so limited in their thought process? Rest assured, you are not alone. The world is slowly waking up to what you already know inside, yet can't quite verbalize. Welcome to the Spiritual Dope Podcast, the show that answers the questions you never even knew to ask, but needed the answers to. Questions about you, this world, the people in it. Most importantly, how do I proceed now moving forward? We don't claim to have all the answers, but we sure do love living in the question. Time for another hit of Spiritual Dope with your host, Brandon Henley. Let's get right into today's episode.
Right now, when you come to mind, I did a series that was called Sinners into Saints, right? And I can't think of a better person really that is that a sinner, like missing the mark on life, kind of, right? And now you've turned it around and into something else. But let's share your journey for like people that don't. Dude, my kids don't even know what MTV is, first of all, right? Like, how mind-boggling is that?
Yeah. It's literally two different worlds.
That's right.
Your kids will grow up not even knowing or couldn't even imagine what it's like to not have a cell phone, right? Like, right. We went from that juxtaposition from no cell phones, like nothing, wireless internet, to literally anything at the blink of an eye, at the touch of our fingertips. So it's quite a transition.
That's crazy.
But I think we're blessed to have experienced both of those worlds.
Yeah, I love it. I love where we are, right? Having not had all this technology and stuff where we can just reach out, do what we're doing right now, to having it, like, because I would say we appreciate it that much more, right?
Absolutely. And we have the ability to shut things off and slow things down, because we remember what it was like to not have these resources so readily available that the 13, 14, 16, 18-year-old kid today couldn't even fathom not living without.
That's right. That's right. Well, Brandon, let's jump into it, man. Let's jump into how we just kind of the addiction part, right? Like, jumping straight into there. Like, when did you kind of first get involved with any drugs, and when did you realize that you had a problem, or when did it start taking over your life?
I believe my story is my story, and we all have our own stories and our own journeys. And although the specifics may vary of each person's story, I think the endings remain the same. And my story is that my mother is not an addict or an alcoholic. My brother or sister who are by a different man are not an addict or an alcoholic. But my father was an addict. His father was an addict. So I believe that I was genetically predisposed. I didn't really have much of a say-so in the matter. And my story, I don't think, is much different than any others, to be honest with you. I was groomed. I was raised in the world of a fast life. My father never held a job a day in his life. He taught me one thing: if and when I go to prison, how to conduct myself. What the Hell's Angels. He was a rather unsavory kind of fella. He is no longer with us. He was diagnosed with a disease of addiction and ran with it untreated for many years until, I always talk to people when I say this, the issue will be addressed. Like, the issue 100% will be addressed. And either you choose to address the issue, you go to treatment, get your life back, things that you have no idea that exist in life, or the issue addresses you and I get a phone call from your people saying, thanks for trying to help him, but he didn't make it. Yeah. And my father's issue was addressed, but not on his terms. And he's dead and he's no longer with us. But my mother was very successful. She was a nuclear physicist on the board of Mercy Hospital. My brother's an attorney in the White House, practices benefits, So that's where I believe I was groomed. I was raised for that world. My father and his biker buddies would come to the house and grow a lot of herbs, smoke a lot of drugs, sell a lot of drugs, fast life, fast women. Sure. I kind of absorbed that coming up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're a product of your environment, man. Right.
Absolutely.
It's really hard to escape that. Being a father and just seeing how much of an impact what I do rubs off on my children. It's like it's mind blowing. It's just the small things that you don't think that they're picking up. They're picking up every detail, all of it. And so, yeah, being caught up in that and seeing that as you're growing up, that's pretty insane. Do you think like, you know, parlaying some of that nuclear physicist, some of that success, like was that like your skateboarding success, do you think? Like,
Well, I think, you know, thank God for skateboarding. Skateboarding raised me, and skateboarding made me who I am today.
mm,
In all areas of my life, including recovery. Right. Because what I didn't know then that I know now is that skateboarding weeds out the quitters. Skateboarders aren't really the kind of guys that will go try a trick, and if they don't make it, just say, I didn't really want it anyways. Right. Like I will try a trick for hours, for days, for weeks, for months, occasionally years, if need be, until that one, you know, stroke of ingenious alignment and everything makes sense, and I make the trick, and that instant gratification, I'm on to the next.
for sure, for sure.
And that's where my recovery came from. You know, I refuse to accept failure. No is not an option. And so I believe we all have these God-given talents. You could be the best ping pong player in the world, but God might not see fit to put a paddle in your hand. I was blessed with the ability to have a skateboard put in my hand at the age of 7. And then that board touched my hand, I knew I was going to be a professional skateboarder. Right.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I just knew it.
That's awesome. I'm still trying to figure out how to get a kickflip to land, Brandon. After all these years, actually, my son wanted to, pick up skateboard, and so we went out and, got a board, and we went out to the local park. So, I love that story. You're right. Like you'll never quit that. Trying to get that trick and just keep going for it. And you never quit trying to get sober, right? Like 13 tries.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, way many more tries, but 13 attempts at checking myself into a facility. But I remember, like, during the era of filming Viva La Bam, right? Like, we'd be filming all day, and after we were wrapped, the cast and the crew would go to the bar in town. And before I'd go meet them at the pub, I would go to an AA meeting. And I would end up meeting them at the bar to get fucking annihilated. And my buddy Bam was like, what is wrong with you? You go to these meetings and then you come get loaded with us. Like, it makes no sense. But to me, it made a lot of sense, because I knew that one day it was going to end one of two ways. Either I was going to get sober, or I was going to die in the process of trying. But I was never the kind of guy that accepted the outcome to be a forever thing of my addiction. I like, fuck that.
What do you mean by that? Like
I never was the guy that was like, I'm going to die with a needle in my arm. I am happy in active addiction. Just leave me be. This is all that I want. No.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you always see yourself getting beyond it, or that wasn't going to be your story?
I didn't know what my story was going to be. My story was going to end one of two ways. Either I got sober, or I died in the process of trying.
Right. And, your journey wasn't like, just kind of a backyard addiction. Like, I mean, you were, breaking the houses, stealing stuff, getting caught. I was listening to a podcast earlier about like people literally putting hits out on you. Right. It's been pretty crazy. What was like, share a story or two about your addicted life. Something that gives a glimpse into the seediness of it.
Yeah. Well, my mother, in the beginning of my alcoholism, she used to pray to God, please, God, don't let tonight be that night that I received that call that my son has succumbed to his addiction and he's no longer with us. She used to pray not to get that call, to at the end of my addiction, praying to God, please let tonight be the night that I finally receive that call.
Yeah.
Just so I can know he's safe once and for all. That's kind of the depravity and the depths that my addiction took me to. My mother, who is my number one supporter and would do anything for me at the drop of the dime, went from praying to please never receive a call that I had died to, at the end, praying to God, please just let me get this call already. You know, that I think sums it up in itself, man. Like, that's the nature of my disease. The progression is fast, it's rapid, and it's very drastic.
Would you say, like, was that to end her misery or yours?
Fuck, both.
Yeah.
I imagine, you know, after, you know, 22 years of active addiction, 13 inpatient treatment centers, lost count of outpatients and detoxes. My mother had already bought me a plot. People had taken life insurance policies out on me. Came to after being on life support for 7 days at the same hospital my mother's a nuclear physicist at. She sold 3 homes to pay for 2 different treatment centers. I was kind of that guy that was deemed unhelpable and incapable of ever getting sober.
Right. Right.
So I'm sure it was a little both, my misery and hers.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. You know, I was able to join you with your sober house, and I said hello to her for a quick moment, and she just mentioned that right now she's just so happy that you're able to be around for the holidays, right? That you're actually a welcome guest for the holidays, and I thought that was a pretty cool thing to hear.
Give me 1 second. My iPad was about to die, so I had to charge it in.
No worries.
Laptop. Ugh. Well, yeah, that's the funny thing about sobriety is that, like, and I tell all the guys that live in Novak's house and anyone else that's early in sobriety for that matter, be careful what you ask for, because sometimes you just might get it. Right?
For sure.
And now I'm a sober guy and I'm coming up on 8 years and I have a lot of responsibilities and a lot of people depend and rely on me and some of those people are my family members. So my mother, God bless her soul, is my favorite person in this world. She probably calls me 10 times a day.
Does she?
Yeah. And you know, it's a blessing, and sometimes I can perceive it to be a curse.
For sure.
But that's all I ever wanted in the beginning, was like to just feel humanized and normalized again.
Yeah.
Like a member of society, not an outcast, not you know, not something or someone to be discarded because I had a deeper seated issue. Because before, for a lot of years, when people saw me, they would like cross the streets or pretend that they didn't see me or walk the other way, rightfully so. Or if you told me you loved me, then I had you. If you told me you loved me, then I equated that to $10. So people had to love me from a distance. You know? So now it's really a beautiful thing to be part of my family's life. You know, I wasn't for a long time, and nothing to do with them. It was all me.
Right.
And I had, even when I was around physically, mentally, I had been checked out for so many years. So, you know, it's nice, man. I could go on for hours, but yeah.
Well, no doubt, right? Well, let's hop into the one part that I think is a little key to the Novak House and you doing what you're doing right now. Let's just tell a quick story of the 13th check-in, right? I guess we'll call it when you you go in, pockets ripped out. You tell the story.
Yeah. Oh, well, you know, I May 25th, 2015, I found myself in a position where for the first time in my life, the pain had become so unbearable that I was willing to do anything in order to finally get myself out of the position I had created for myself, right? So all of a sudden I started becoming accountable for my actions, and realizing that my very best thinking placed me here, and that I am the common denominator in my problems. And if I get the fuck out of my way, everything was I. And I can no longer deny the severity of my disease, the depravity that it takes me to. And every attempt at every one of those 13 facilities prior to, or 12 prior to, they didn't tell me anything different than the other one missed out on. You know, like 13 was no different than 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1. The only difference was the pain had become so great that I was willing to finally become open-minded just long enough to ask for help. And then more importantly, be able to follow through with the suggestions that people like yourself and others had gave me. And, so my sponsor always ingrained in me, and I'm not the one people call for sympathy or a lighter, softer way. Because my sponsor always told me, you never get between an alcoholic and their bottom. And I don't. And I will not. I believe there has to be repercussions from our actions. And finally, the repercussions from my actions became great enough that, again, I was willing to do anything that was suggested. And I went to that facility, number 13, and literally, as a sponge, absorbed anything that anyone told me to do. I was tired. I was just tired. I was tired. Yeah. I was cured. All these seeds had been planted unbeknownst to me at each one of those attempts at each facility. And at facility number 13, it's like the skies parted and I walked across the sea and everything just made sense from all the previous attempts.
Right.
And I, not to say things won't change, but to this point today, coming up on 8 years sober, my sobriety has been fairly simple because I've stuck to the basics. They told me, if you stick to the basics, you never have to go back to the basics. Yes, I've had heartaches, I've had deaths, I've had troubled times. But knowing where I came from and the pain that I felt as a direct result of active addiction, like there's, to me, the allure and the illusion of a drink or a drug being a great time has wore off so fucking long ago.
Right. Yeah.
Dude. And I adhere to the suggestions that my mentors and my sponsors and the 12 steps and Alcoholics Anonymous have given to me, and I can honestly say today, right now, it is physically impossible for me to have a drink now.
So if somebody put a drink in front of you, you just couldn't do it.
Oh, it's impossible for me to. You could put an 8 ball of heroin in my hand right now, and my very first thought would be like, I need to flush this before my cats get to it. That's because I've had that psychic change.
Yeah. Right? Well, let's talk about that, right? Like
the definition of a spiritual experience is simply a psychic change, meaning I, Brandon Novak, today no longer think how I thought walking into treatment center number 13, 8 years ago almost.
You're able to see things differently now.
Oh, I'm a completely different man. I'm rewired.
Yeah.
But that's because, I'm not, people might listen to this and be like, oh, that egotistical fuck. No, I have a very, very, very healthy respect for my disease. But the reality is I'm well armed with the facts. I finally understand the opponent that I'm up against. And most importantly, I suffer with a disease called alcoholism, not alcoholism. Meaning I can be sober on yesterday's sobriety.
Sure. I love that. So, you go in to the 13th place, you're a hot mess. You finally get flipped around. I think what's kind of funny about your story too, you didn't share it here, but like I've listened to it plenty of times. So like where, you go in and they tell you got to get a job, even though you've got like money coming in, right? In one way or another, you've got to go, you're bussing tables, waiting tables. Here you are, Brandon Novak, guy's got, celebrity, he's got endorsements and all this good shit going for him. And you're in there bussing tables and waiting on tables, to make your money, pay your own way out of your pocket. And this was the path that kind of opened up for you. And since you found a way that worked for you, you decided to find a way to share almost that exact same path with others through the Novak House, right?
Absolutely. It's funny. Yeah, totally. But the funny thing is I didn't understand any of the journey that I was on. I never realized along that journey that I was discovering these paths that were all to lead to a much broader fucking scope or a grand scheme, or big picture. I simply was just beaten so bad that I got out of my way, followed suggestions of people that actually knew what they were talking about. And I always say this thing works when I don't work it, right? As long as I stay out of it mentally, follow your suggestions physically, you continue to bring the body, the mind will follow, right? If I found myself in a position where the pain was so great that I was just willing to do anything. It's physically, it defies logic that I can use that very same brain that thought me into that terrible place to then think me out of it. If I could have done that, I wouldn't be in a fucking 12-step program. I wouldn't have ended up in AA. That's not my lifelong dream or goal, believe it or not. So I'm a firm believer now because, again, I was beaten so bad. I knew that my way no longer worked. I got out of my way, had some great mentors, followed their suggestions. They said, go. I said, sure. They said, when? I said, what time? And I just brought the body. I brought the body. And one day the mind just followed.
I love that. Was there ever like a light clicking on for you a moment that, like, I don't know, kind of like when you're first riding a bike, you're like, oh, look, I'm doing it.
Yeah, but everything I've learned in my life is all in retrospect. My life has been lived forward and learned backwards. So the very first moment that took place when I was in my treatment center for my 90 days, and I had, in 90 days, I had made it to my 8th step, and not one step made any difference or any more or less sense than the last. 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, 7 to 8. Nothing. I felt nothing. I had no clue what was going on, but I just, again, followed the suggestions, bringing the body, mind will follow. Right. And all of a sudden, my parole officer, who promised to violate me if I lied to him, then asked the truth, and I lied again because he just told me he'd violate me while I'm in treatment. I knew things were different. And he asked for some evidence about this lie that I had presented, and it was impossible to gather evidence about this lie. And I called my sponsor, and he said, well, you've experienced the 3rd step, right? And I said, yeah.
So what's the 3rd step for people that don't know?
I've came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us, turned our will and our life over to the care of God as we understand him. Yeah. And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, here you go. God is everything or he's nothing. And he said, look at it this way. Let's say he does violate you. That means that you're simply meant to take the message inside the walls to someone who can't get out to hear it from you directly. Yeah. For some reason, I just believed him, and I got on the phone and I called, and it was on a Friday at like 3:30 p.m. and I left a message on his voicemail admitting that I had lied and that was not true what I told him. And I had to wait until Tuesday for him to call me back. I'm at like 86 days sober. Right. My mind usually would be racing. Sure. I'm going to get violated. I'm going back to prison. After I left that message, I went back down to my room and I fell asleep and I slept like a baby. It was the craziest thing ever. And it was right there that I accepted my fate and said, and in telling the truth there, it was like 1 through 8 hit me like a ton of bricks, like a blink of an eye. It all made sense. It was crazy. And I didn't get violated. That's cool. Violate me, like he promised me that he was going to violate me, and he was the guy that was very serious about that.
But I've yet to meet a parole officer that's not serious about their job.
Well, my other one, she was my probation officer, Michelle Ward. God bless her soul, Chester County. She was the one that like saved my life. Weirdly enough, when she should have violated me by every sense of the word.
Yeah. What happened there?
I went in there and she was supposed to violate me. She said, I don't know why I'm not going to violate you, but I'm going to give you one more chance. And she sent me back to the rehab that actually worked. She called and got them on the phone. Okay.
That's crazy. So you're taking this, right? And again, I'm not a stepper, Brandon. And this program isn't about spiritual dope's kind of its own thing, but it follows, oddly enough, the 12-step pattern, right? Yeah. Where you get to this 12th step, and the 12th step is what for the people that don't know, Brandon?
Oh, fuck. You're gonna make me look very.
You didn't know there was going to be a test, huh?
You carry the message to the addict or alcoholic who still suffers.
Right, but you carry the message forward, right?
Yeah.
So that's what you're doing, right? With this, with the Novak House. Let's talk about, let's talk about the Novak House. What it is that you're doing, how long it's been in action, and what's going on there.
Well, so as I completed that 90-day treatment center, from there I went to a sober living house where I lived for 1 year. And the reason why I went there, because my sponsor at the time, who had 11 years, suggested that I go because he did, and he still stayed sober. Right? I wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel here. I knew that my way no longer worked, and my best thinking placed me here. I was getting out of my way, bringing the body. Mind has no idea, but the body's showing up. And I followed his suggestion. Oddly enough, I too am coming up on 8 years. So like weird. Not really. But while I was in that house, me and my best friend, George, who is also still sober to this day, we had literally some of the best times of our life in this house. And I've had some amazing times in my life and I've done really rad shit. I'm kidding you. I think my favorite Christmas ever was in that house.
Okay.
And we understood the importance and the effect that it had on us. And we always talked, and we said that one day when we were in a position that we were financially capable, we were going to recreate that very same house. And also, you people from the sober community kept telling me, in order for me to keep what I have to give it away. So 5 years into my journey, and his as well, we decided we were going to replicate that sober living house. And we did. We opened up our very first Novak's house in Wilmington, Delaware, with 10 beds. And unfortunately, there was quite a need for those services. And I wish there wasn't, and my houses didn't exist. But there are, and they do. And we started with one house with 10 beds, and today we have 4 houses with 40 beds. And I run around the nation like an insane maniac, raising funds, charitable donations to provide scholarships for any man seeking a sober living home. What I've found out that my why, one of my whys today, is to I refuse to let funds be a deterrent as to why someone can't find a safe, adequate home to continue their journey in upon completion of a treatment center.
And I think that's awesome, right? I think when you give your speech, you're taking at your event, you took this is the place where the misfits fit in, right? You're taking the people in.
I mean that too. We take the bottom of the barrel, right? Like, our place is not the place that like you come because you want just a weekend getaway. Now, there are beautiful homes, they're amazing, but there are the people that have burnt their resources and kind of the discarded, as I once was.
For sure. Well, what was it, about that house? Can you pinpoint anything about that place that you guys wanted to replicate?
No,
or was it just the process?
It was the process. Right? Like, there's a million treatment centers out there. There's a million sober houses out there. I'm a firm believer the perfect treatment center or the perfect sober house that you got sober in, the perfect treatment center is the one that you got sober in, right? Whichever one that is.
Yeah.
I know that what we are intent on doing is creating an environment and to make it a home, not a house. And we put a lot of pride and attention into the homes that we create, because we want the individuals that reside in them to take pride in their home and where they reside a little bit more than they might find a drink or a drug appealing. Kind of hoping that the ends justify the means.
For sure. I was talking, who's your carpenter? I don't know if you want to give him a shout out. Yeah.
Well, we have where at?
Who was so he was the dread haired guy that I met there. He did the
he's the painter.
So he said, and your sober house is the only one I've ever stopped in, right? He said though that your houses are like, so nice, right, compared to some other places. Do you think that gives these guys like kind of a feeling of hope as well, being like, wow, I could have something like this for my life if I just keep my shit together?
That's our hopes, right? Like there's a lot of different layers to it, but that's one of them. And it absolutely is it. That paired with accountability, paired with structure, paired with cleanliness, like it all plays a part.
Sure.
It's kind of like sweater, one strand isn't more or less important than the other.
That's right. That's right. And one of the things we talked in brief at your event, but you mentioned like that there is structure, but it's not overly structured. So that gives them enough freedom and space to, I think, be themselves and do what they've got to do without feeling like they're on lockdown.
Yeah, because they're not. And my houses aren't that. They're not one of which where you lose your freedom. Quite the contrary, actually. But the good thing is we do a really good process with assessments. And by being so blessed with that, we don't run into people coming there and getting high so much as we run into people coming there and don't want to follow all the rules. So we really let people know, like, if you're not serious about staying sober, this isn't the house for you. You can't get lost in it. There's cheaper houses you can go with less rules, right? Like we'll give you an address. So it's and
does anybody ever take you up on that, Brandon? Does anybody be like, you know what, thanks for that, and they roll down the street?
Maybe they won't tell us, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Everyone's process is their process, and we're all entitled to our process. If somebody would have robbed me of my process along my way, I wouldn't be here today.
That's right.
So like, I'm a big fan of that. Do you
ever, this crosses my mind, given everything that I've consumed and put in my body over the years, which is, I'm going to guess less than you. But I'll be like, I got to a point where like, you know what? I put so much shit in my body. I've done so many things that, like, if I'm still alive right now, there's got to be a reason for it. And like leaning into that, right? Like, and just being like, discover the purpose. Like I get down to your place and do the breath work with the guys. I feel like that's a piece of something I'm able to do. Does that ever occur to you? Or are you just driving with the headlights on?
Oh, no. Yeah. I mean, in the first couple of years, I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual. And I didn't really think much about it the first couple of years of my sobriety. I just continued to bring the body. About the body. And then around 2.5 years, it totally transitioned to I'm completely spiritual, and everything is of a much bigger, broader plan that I'm merely a grain of sand in, and I play no part of. So it's like I don't take credit for any of this. None of this is by my doing. I'm simply just playing the part that I was assigned today, and now everything is spiritual. Like everything. Maybe too much so sometimes, where I just kind of give up to the universe.
Well, yeah. So tell me a little bit about that. I love that, right? Obviously, so spiritual dope came from, just recognizing like this connection with source and like having that high from like whatever you call that, right? Connection to God, source, universe. What's that story look like for you now? I hear you talking a lot about synchronicities. I think there was I caught like an Instagram of you toting some crystals around. What's that look like? You've got this work that you're doing right now. I'm sure that that's part of your spirituality, but what does your own spiritual practice look like?
Well, every day I start my day on my knees, and every day I end my day on my knees. And I know that without a constant contact and a very healthy connection with my higher power, none of this is possible. None of this. And I never get that confused or think that I created this. I'm very big with that. I just try to remain as useful as I can to my God's children, which are my brothers and sisters. And The more I do for others, the better my life is.
Do you feel like the more that you're able to do for others, the more that kind of flows through you?
Well, what flows through?
Like, just like, I would say, what I'm hearing, what I feel like you're saying is like you're an instrument of God, right? And like divine source flows through you and you're able to, connect with others.
I don't really think of it like that. I don't think
Yeah.
of what flows through me. I just think like, because again, I'm too smart for my own fucking good, and I'll twist this narrative to make me think that I've done this. So
Sure.
I try not to, I just kind
It's a
of,
tricky slope, right?
yeah, I just kind of, it works when I don't work it. It's crazy, but I don't think much about a lot of the stuff that I do just because I'm so busy with so many projects that I don't really have time to sit back and connect the dots of like, oh, I did this for this person and this person achieved this and now they're here with them, and I just get so caught up in the day to day.
Yeah.
Which is probably for the best.
Sure. So you're just staying out of your own way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Plus, what I've learned is the longer I stay sober, the less that I know, because I see how amazing my spirituality is and how powerful that it is. So like, I'd never be so arrogant. Personally, this is just me. I would never be so arrogant to think that I understand what my God's will is. That's completely insane because it's so fucking big and vast and
right. No, I'm with you, right? Like, if I think I know what to do and I can do it all by myself, then, to your point, like I wouldn't be in this situation I'm in now, right?
oh,
One of the things that I was actually touched by, and it was a bit of a challenge. I'm curious to hear how you deal with it. One of your residents, he was probably one of the first guys that I connected with coming down to the Novak House. Tim,
yeah.
right? Recently passed, and his passing impacted me in a way that most don't. It's all over on TV, and I haven't been close to somebody passing for quite some time. How does that impact you? Like, what do you?
I wish I could say it impacted me more, but I've kind of become numb to it.
Well, I mean, is that because it's you're surrounded by it, and you're only doing what you can do, and let go and let God type of thing, or?
Well, I believe that everyone has a message to carry, right? And I believe I believe my God is everything. I don't believe God is what I think he should or shouldn't be. I believe God is everything. And I might get scolded for this, but I believe God is heroin. I believe God is crack. I believe God is fucking alcohol, because without those substances, it would not have brought me to the child of God that I am today. Right. So, and that's just me. I'm not imposing my will on anything or anyone else. But I believe that, unfortunately, some have to die for others to live.
I get it, right? That's the example. And you've got a bunch of people that are close to that, and they see what can happen if they think that they can go back.
It doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
But
yeah. So what's if I'm in the Novak House, what are some of the things I got to do? What's some of the structure?
Oh, you have to have a job. You have to have a sponsor. You have to be working the steps. You have to go to 5 meetings a week. You have to make curfews. You have to pass random urinalysis. You have to continue, and successfully complete IOP. And then there's a gradual step down pace to that.
What's IOP?
Intensive outpatient. So it's just a continuum of your aftercare of whatever program you came from.
Got it. What's the long-term vision, or where do you see this going for you, the Novak House?
When will this air?
Probably not till like next year.
Okay, so
2023.
Well, by the time that you beautiful ladies and gentlemen are watching this, you'll see that where my goals and dreams had taken me to, because the day that we aired this was Thursday, November 17th, 2022, or that we filmed this. I'm opening a rehab. I'm opening a treatment center. And that treatment center will be open by the time your viewers see this.
Wow.
And it's going to be called Redemption Addiction Treatment Center in Wilmington, Delaware.
Oh, wow. Well, congratulations, man.
That's my end game. That, at least I think. Who knows?
Okay. That's your next step in the process, right?
That's what I always wanted my end game to be. And through the grace of God, it's happening. And we're hoping to, projected opening is mid-January, no later than February.
Awesome, man. Congratulations. Is that in association with, I know you've done a lot of work with, I think Banyan and some others. Is that in association with them, or is this on your own?
This is on my own. This is my own venture.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
I've parted ways with Banyan. Amazing program, but I think simultaneously we just outgrew each other. And I didn't get sober to just get stagnant. I believe sobriety entails us a life of choices and options. And why would I not take advantage of it?
That makes sense. How do you feel like yours will be different from any others, or how will it be the same as others? Curious on how that's going to look.
Well, it's the same as my houses, right? Like the personal connection. And honestly, Brandon Novak will not be at the other 10,000, 50,000 treatment centers that exist out there. Like Brandon Novak will be at Redemption, where I'll be working with clients day in and day out, you know.
Your focused energy there. Yeah, that's awesome. Is there going to be a skate park?
That's a lie.
That's a lie. They said no.
There's skate parks on the street, which I will absolutely take the clients to 100%. But on the premises, I don't think so.
Got it. Well, Brandon, look, man, I just wanted to have you on, share your story. Sinners and the Saints, man. I really think that it's important. One of the things that you've definitely said before is, like, you know, who you were isn't who you have to be going forward. And what the work that you're doing now illustrates that, right? The guy that was robbing everybody, you know, years ago, is now out here, you know, basically getting money to give to other people to so that they can achieve sobriety and live a decent life.
I'm grateful, man. And I'd like to end this kind of alluding to the point you just made. If anyone out there needs help getting into treatment, they can call me directly, personally, at 610-314-6747.
Thanks, Brandon.
Love you, brother. Thanks so much.
Yeah, man.
Really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Spiritual Dope Podcast. Stay connected with us directly through spiritualdope.co. You can also join the discussion on Facebook, Spiritual Dope, and Instagram at spiritual_dope. If you would like to speak with us, send us an email through brandon@spiritualdope.co. And as always, thank you for cultivating your mindset and creating a better reality. This concludes the most thought-provoking part of your day. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay fully up to date. Until next time, be kind to yourself and trust your intuition.